Members of the New Orleans area congressional delegation have remained silent on President Trump's unsupported claim of widespread voter fraud and the possibility of a stolen election.
But state Democratic leaders are speaking out, as Paul Murphy reports.
Speaking to reporters at the White House last night, President Trump repeated his baseless claim that he is being cheated out of an election victory. His opponent, Democrat Joe Biden, has opened up a narrow lead as the vote count continues in several key states.
And this is a case where they're trying to steal an election. They're trying to rig an election, and we can't let that happen.
Top Louisiana Democrats objected to the president's comments.
You typically have to have evidence of the fraud, and then you go out and you talk about it. I don't think you go out and talk about it and then go in search of the evidence.
At some point in time, though, the leadership of the Republican Party, should the numbers continue to go the way they go on, are going to have to go visit with the president and saying there is no basis for you to undermine our democracy.
Top state Republicans have avoided criticizing the president's attacks on the integrity of the democratic process. Instead, they made generic statements condemning voter fraud. Congressman Steve Scalise said Americans deserve full transparency to have confidence that their votes are being counted accurately. Senator Bill Cassidy stated on Twitter that he respects all parties' right to pursue their claims to ensure a transparent and fair election. Cassidy added, "It's important that every legal vote be counted." And Senator John Kennedy tweeted the president's allegations about election irregularities should be heard promptly in a court of law. Democratic State Senator Troy Carter says the lawmakers should condemn the president's unsupported allegations.
And these are fine gentlemen, but you know, it's time for them and everyone else to step up and call balls and strikes, to call it as you see it and defend our Constitution, not any one individual person.
President Trump plans to challenge the outcome of the election in court if he loses the race. Paul Murphy, Eyewitness News.
Now, we reached out to members of Louisiana's congressional delegation. They declined our invitation to be interviewed about the president's comments. Instead, their office sent us a statement or shared previous comments that they had made on social media. Eyewitness News will have continuing coverage of the presidential race as the votes are counted. Download our free smartphone app to keep up with the very latest. You can also see the new updates on our website and social media feeds.